Neither of us has an intro, do we?
I thought you said you had an intro.
I had an intro for Battlefront 2.
Oh.
I can't believe we did the same mix-up, but in reverse this time.
Oh, we fucked up big time. We're out of the wasteland. That's the nice part. But now we're stuck in space again.
We're in a different kind of wasteland.
Yeah, we're in a different wasteland. And also, we need to get contractors to rebuild our space station. Do you think we should get the same people that built the Death Star? I think that's a viable solution.
I think they can be found somewhere a bit north of the Devil's Tower. Or the Devil Spire. Oh. Damn it!
The Devil Spire. Yeah, I played the Devil Spire. Murph, let me tell you, this was a recommended game from Brendan. As we all know, Brendan is Mr. Dungeon Crawl, and he kept telling me you gotta play Devil Spire. You gotta play Devil Spire. And it is definitely a hardcore dungeon crawler, but it's actually really manageable and really fun. Particularly in sort of the creativity that the player has to do per like floor, and sort of dealing with the loot you get and being like, yes. And there's a lot of risk reward in terms of like, oh, I lose this and gain this, or it's just super fun. And you keep going back to it even when you die. It's great.
So this is like a first-person type dungeon crawler, right?
Yes, this is a traditional first-person dungeon crawl. There's like a village at the start. You go in, or you set up, you go in, and you try to go. What's interesting is that there's different difficulties based on sort of like the different floors you go to. You can either go down or up the tower, and in those, it's interesting, but you have to beat the game first to be able to do those things. What I really like most about this game, and what I wasn't prepared for, are the monster designs. I think the monster designs are crazy interesting. When we have the YouTube video uploaded, you will be watching and seeing the monster designs in action. And at first, in your first like 2 or 3 playthroughs, you're really like intimidated. But you sort of understand what ranges you can be at and what things are good or what things are bad. And things start to get way more manageable. I want to say like in my first 2 playthroughs, I didn't even get past like floor 10, the first boss, or the floor 5, the first boss. And then like on my 3rd playthrough, I shot to like floor 20, like super easy. Cause like it started to make sense in my head. And
how dynamic are the levels? Like, is it a lot of like corridors a la Doom, or is it something closer to like a Lunacid where it's dealing with like a lot of different environments and
it layers? Is for sure hallways and squares. However, that doesn't mean they're not dynamic, particularly in terms of traps. I think the traps in this game are really, really fun. And then maybe every 5 floors or maybe every 10 floors, things start to change in aesthetic. By a certain point in time, you can go out, like you go outside, quote unquote, and it's like bushes and stuff. So there's like a lot of arrow traps. There's like a blade trap, and also you're doing that thing in Doom where you're sort of looking for entryways to secret areas or entryways into shortcuts. And that definitely like showed itself in the hedge maze. When you're doing the hedge maze, it's like, oh, I can do it here. It's just super fun. It is definitely like typical in terms of a map layout, but that sort of helps you more than hurts you.
And I'm seeing here, it kind of has like that lo-fi like PS1 aesthetic to it. Perhaps we both played another game that has that aesthetic?
Oh my gosh, you played legally distinct from Bloodborne Nightmare Kart.
Nightmare Kart. In order to get it on Steam, the creator did have to remove the Bloodborne names and imagery, but it's like not that far off. This is from the same solo developer that did the Bloodborne PSX release on itch.io, and that was a very good release. Like, they absolutely know the aesthetic, not just like in the character models being low poly and stuff, but in how the menus look and sound, and sort of the crunchiness to the audio design. And that's all carried over here into a really total package for a free release.
You know, it's crazy because in my head, You know, the thing is like everyone joked about Bloodborne Kart for so long. It's a clash between two completely opposite things. But when you have to dedicate months and years of your life to making a video game, you kind of have to take it seriously. So Nightmare Kart on like a foundational level is a good game. Like in terms of kart play, it is fun and it works. And what it does so smart is it sort of carries the tension and the adrenaline specifically of Bloodborne. Has the very specific bursts of like, oh, I need to get this moment down pat. You know what I mean? It has the same vibe in that gameplay sense, even though it's a completely different genre.
It's kind of like F-Zero because you're just constantly boosting. Like that's what the game's really built around, is you're consuming your I don't know, nitro vials in order to like boost for like 2 seconds. But you can get those vials back by drifting or doing tricks off jumps and stuff. So you're just kind of constantly tapping the boost button and hoping that like by the time you run out of vials, you're at a point that you can recover more. And at the same time, you're getting item boxes a la Mario Kart that give you stuff like a leverless shotgun, so you can shoot other players who you can just eliminate them from the race outright.
And it's so cool because those guns and those weapons, they still have that precision and precise timing of a parry system. It's so crazy how she was able to translate those elements into something that feels very authentic. Particularly like when you do the bosses, when you play the main campaign and you do the bosses, it is like crazy fun. I had a little bit of trouble. I played it like so early on release. This was before the Steam update. That there was a glitch on I don't know his actual, it's Gascoigne, but it's not Gascoigne. You know who it is?
I forget what the parody name is. I was very tickled. Like I said, it's like it's legally distinct enough. Like Gehrman is called Herman. It's not the pale doll. It's the white puppet or something like that. You know?
Yeah. But they still have some really cool things, and like you can tell like what's supposed to be the things, and you can tell what's supposed to be the arenas too. You're like, oh, I totally know this arena. But anyways, I had like glitches in that first boss, so I went through it and I proceeded onward. But that made me cool on the game to where it's like maybe I should come back to it later. I think the most stellar thing about this game was the soundtrack.
Yeah,
I think the soundtrack bops.
Yeah, because it's like a fucking Castlevania soundtrack. Like it's gothic, but also like super funky. Like just the piano, the pipe organs popping off at the same time as the synthesizer.
It's like it's so funny how funk has become like, and it's so funny that funk has become a synonymous with the horror genre within video games, even though it's not scary at all. It just associates with adrenaline and a fast pace.
It's that Michael Jackson Thriller. He was a visionary.
He truly was. I also liked the Kart roster, and I also appreciated that it wasn't just racing. In terms of a kart game, there's a lot more to it than just racing. There's battle modes, and I think the battle modes are definitely a little bit lesser, but I still think they work functionally.
I think it's just enough because it's not like full Twisted Metal, but it is like something I could see if this was like an actual release on like the PS2 or whatever. Like I could see like inviting friends over for a pizza party and hey, we're gonna boot up Nightmare Kart, you know?
Yeah.
And then talk about our dream roster for Nightmare Kart 2.
Oof.
But I do appreciate the roster elements because there are like some, as like a person whose favorite FromSoft game is Bloodborne, there are like some deep cuts here that are appreciable. Like I love that the little servant, the little ghoulies have their own playable character, but it's like 3 of them in a trench coat like situation where like one's handling the pedals, one's handling the steering wheel.
I think Bloodborne works really well with humor, and the kart aspect emphasizes that a lot. I also like the baby. It's supposed to be like Murgo, but it's like, oh, it's just so fun. That's my main.
You main Murgo and Nightmare Kart?
Yeah, it's funny. It's just so funny.
This is so easy to recommend because it's 100% free, and it is like, it's just a labor of love, you know?
Yep.
and we're not getting anything official Bloodborne related, so we have to make do with the legally distinct fan works.
Yes. Yes. No, I appreciate this game a lot, and I love it so much. And it would be so easy for this developer to make a tangible game of their own IP. Technically, they did. You know what I mean? And sell it. And instead, they just make what they want to make. And that's something super respectable.
Yeah. So, the Bloodborne brand has fallen on some hard time, but it hasn't fallen on aces in a while.
There you go. I played a game that I'm going to highly recommend called Fallen Aces.
This is the Goon Simulator.
This is the Goon Simulator. What's so weird is I played this back at PAX East. I don't know if I wrote about it. Did I write about it, Murph?
I remember you talking about it.
I don't think I wrote about it because I didn't think it was... the demo was like the first level. I get the feeling after replaying that first level that there were a lot of enemies added to the demo for the sake of people experiencing combat, and that's not actually what this game is. I think that was a very different experience than when I played this game. This game is secretly, maybe not so secretly, a stealth game. You're trying to avoid things, and a lot more like a Thief or a Gloomwood. It's a little bit less Thief than Gloomwood, and there is like a melee aspect to it. If you get caught, you very rarely have guns. You most of the time have your fists or a melee weapon. When you do have guns, they have a very limited ammunition, and they are functionally like guns. 1 or 2 hits will kill somebody.
I didn't know that about this game, because this got, I think, this was like everywhere at the not E3 like indie showcases. I saw it popped up on 3 of them, and I was like, okay, it's a boomer shooter with a hand drawn aesthetic and like a 1920s like sense of humor about things. What you're saying, like, it's more like a stealth immersive sim that actually has it like plonking on my radar now.
Yes, it's kind of crazy, and what I like about it is like it has like I don't want to say it's a problem. It has the thing where there's like 10 different solutions to get to something, and there's usually a super simple answer. You know what I mean? Like you'll go through, go through something.
You could figure out all the ways to sneak past these guards and hack these turrets, or you can just use a vent that goes around them.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. There's like a lot of gates where I'm like overthinking. You can parkour up like a rooftop to jump over the thing, or there's a fucking hole. You know what I mean? Yeah. And in that sense, I feel like maybe the level design is a little bit too open in that sense. But otherwise, I think that it's dense and intricate and really fun. I would highly recommend this game. I think it's one of the bests of the year.
Is it fully out? Was it like one of those episode 1 type deals?
It is one of those episode 1 type deals. The full thing is not out technically. But it's like 5 levels. So and they're 5 extensive levels. They're not small levels.
Well, especially if you're talking about like something more in line with like a Dishonored type immersive sim, they're probably like very worth exploring.
Yes, 100%.
And
when you explore, you have tangible rewards like a gun. Like if you look, you will find a gun, but you have to look for it.
Okay. One of the things that was highlighted in one of its not E3 appearances was like they were really hyping up, oh, you can use anything as a weapon. You can pick up a rat. Like, how much does that aspect really play into the game, or is that just for jokes?
I don't think that's actually for jokes. There's a lot less stuff hanging around for me to... I'm hesitant to call it an immersive sim. However, you are often picking up something. Let's say you pick up a pipe, and you use the pipe to beat someone. At a certain point in time, that has weapon degradation, and then it breaks. Thankfully, when it breaks, you can also throw it. So you have a lot of opportunities to pick up random things and improvise. Improvisation is a big thing to the game, and you will pick up random shit. That's 100% part of it. But, I wouldn't say it's like an appeal. But then again, I'm also one of those people that's like, Ratchet and Clank. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh my god, 50 different weapons. At the end of the day, they're all the same weapon to me. Does that make sense?
That's 100% fair. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not one of those types of people. The other thing I wanted to say was, in that same thief sense, I want to normalize that thing where you're like sneaking around an event or something and you hear, this is so thief-like, that's one of the best parts of Thief, is when you're sneaking around an event and you hear two guards exposit lore or like whatever just because you're overhearing a conversation. I love that.
Eavesdropping.
The eavesdropping is so fun. It's
You like
it's
to
one of
listen
the
at
best ways.
keyholes.
Yes, it's like you're stealing the morsels of information, so it makes it so much better.
You know, historically, who also collected information, Skalds,
Okay.
which is an old Viking term for effectively storyteller or poet, who would keep
Oh
the
my
the
gosh.
warriors entertained on long ship cruises.
That makes so much sense now that you say that. That
Oh,
makes
you
so
didn't
much
know the
sense.
term Skald?
No.
Well,
That's crazy. Skald is a great game. I have not put that many hours into it. I'll probably put like 3 or 4 hours into it. But I gotta say, high recommend. This is better than Fallen Aces. This is a must play, in my opinion, especially if you are a fan of the RPG genre. And if you are a fan of, like, it's very like Ultima-esque. It's I'm trying to think of how to say it. It's a hardcore RPG. It's top down. You make your own character and you have a party. The way it tells its story, the look of the game, the systems within the game are so much fun. The actual combat is kind of tactics based, where you're sort of like, when the round starts, you place your people in certain spots and then you have them go at it with different abilities. But then the actual fundamental game is so hardcore RPG. It's super fun. And then there's like good role playing elements to it. It's good storytelling. It's got that thing that you talked about in the Fallout 1 episode where it's like the text flavors the imagination in a way that goes beyond the visual. And it's such a good adventure in that sense. It feels like a D&D adventure. And it's so fun.
mm-hmm. And this actually skews more like Lovecraftian, I've heard,
Yes.
especially from when you and Brendan were talking about it on the Crawl Discord server, which all of our lovely listeners should go join in on.
Mm-hmm.
But this skews more horror, right, than like a traditional
Yes.
like Ultima would.
I don't want to spoil things, but yes. I would say you basically you go on a trip to find an old friend who's a royal, and you crash the ship crashes and you wake up on an island that's mysterious and full of different, monsters and creatures and stuff. So in that sense, it's crazy. And even like the death screen, I think the first inkling you get that it's a Lovecraft game is the death screen, which sort of has a hint of the cosmos in it. And in that, the less you know about the game going in, the better.
Now, this is, from what you and Brendan have talked about, this is definitely on my radar. I think the Steam sale that's coming up this summer, I'm going to pick it up. Because, like I said, I've mentioned multiple times on this podcast, I've been reading that book on the history of CRPGs. And, like, this came out at the perfect time where I'm like, I understand what an Ultima-like means now.
No, it's hype, 100%. Also, just another shout out to a thing that Bro specifically likes. I like good character creators, and I think Devil Spire was like a serviceable and good character creator. I think Skald has a particularly great character creator. Maybe I'm just like a sucker for like seeing a sprite in different colors, but has good background choices and class choices that I think are effective. And I like the skill tree as well. I think the skill trees are really good.
Do you make just a character? Because I'm seeing here from screenshots, you have like a 6-person party. Are those people you pick up on the way, or do you make
Those are people you pick up along the way.
Oh, okay.
Those are actual characters with actual personalities to them. But that being said, you can also do their stats as well. Like, you could do their stat trees, and they have different stat trees than you. So, in that, it's super fun. I would still recommend. It's still great.
You know what's also an RPG where you collect friends along the way?
I am so curious as to your thoughts on this game.
So we are once again returning to the Yakuza Minute, so I can talk about Yakuza Like a Dragon.
So guide me through this, Murph.
This is the best Yakuza game I have played so far.
Okay, you were so worried too because you were like, I'm not crazy about the idea of spending 80 hours in a Yakuza game.
So here's what it is. This could be recency bias. I beat this like last night at 1 a.m, right? Like, and I clocked 53 hours on it. And where to start with this? Okay. The story to this one is great, but it's very long and winding. So they switch up from their 3D brawler beat 'em up type gameplay to a straight up JRPG. And for that, they give it something that's more like a JRPG story, where you kind of like start small, like, you know, stopping the goblin attacks on the town turns into stopping the invading army from the country of evil from invading, to slaying the mad god that the country of evil worships, you know. Like, it builds on itself in a very, like, anthology, ebb and flow kind of way. The cutscene direction in this one is really head and shoulders above most of the Yakuza games outside of, I would say, parts of Zero. Like the opening cutscene of this game is like a young boy who does kabuki theater because he loves to act, but his mom's this horrible person that like steals his pay and cheats on his dad and threatens to cut him up with scissors when he says he'll tell. And then his dad's like, "Hey son, I know your mom's a bitch, but let's go get Peking duck for dinner." And they go have Chinese food, and the waiter shoots his dad in the head. And that character, that little boy, is not our main character. That is his boss, played by George Takei. So,
what the fuck?
Yeah. So we follow the story of Ichiban Kasuga, who is this sort of like man-child. He's obsessed with Dragon Quest. Like, they specifically name drop a ton of Dragon Quest stuff in this game, which surprised me because this is a Sega title. Like, I know Dragon Quest is like super integral to the foundation of JRPGs and stuff. I guess I was just like thinking, why didn't Sega just like say, "Oh, he plays a lot of Phantasy Star," you know?
It's not the same, you know, and Brendan would say this, it's like Dragon Quest is not only so influential to JRPGs, it's influential to Japan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the JRPG battles that you do, those are, for lack of a better phrasing, that's Ichiban's schizophrenia. That's how he sees the world, is that, like, when he gets in a fight with someone, they transform before his eyes into these, like, demonic figures.
Okay. That's weird, but okay. I'm riding with it, sure.
And the opening is very, like, it feels slow, but it's also really deliberate, because the entire time I was like, where are they going with some of these plot points? Like, George Takei's character has this son who's wheelchair bound, and his girlfriend that he loves with all of his heart is just like treating him as she's a gold digger, you know? Mm-hmm. And then Ichiban has to take the rap for someone else in his Yakuza family, because someone killed a Tojo clan captain. And Ichiban's like, "I will take the rap because I love George Takei. I love my boss." So he goes to jail for 18 years, during which the entire events of the rest of the Yakuza franchise have just played out. And he comes into Kamurocho, and it's like, the Tojo clan is gone. Like, they got wiped out by the new governor of Tokyo. And then Ichiban gets shot, and then he wakes up in a completely different city. One moment, I've completely forgotten the name.
So now I have multiple questions. But
hold on. And so he is homeless, and it's not even like it sets up all this stuff and then ignores it. It's just like Ichiban has like this idea of like, well, I guess, like, you know, I was in jail for 18 years. The world has changed. I need to like move up from rock bottom, and it kind of becomes this story about like starting your life over in your 40s. Because he starts homeless and then he ends the game running for the governor of Tokyo.
Wow. Wow. There's a lot that happens there. Okay, so I have multiple questions. So
Yes.
let me just get the easy one off the thing. When you say new town, that means there's a new map, right?
Yes, it is set in
And that's a big deal.
Yokohama. Ijinsho is the new setting.
That's a big deal because a lot of these games use the same map. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so
Okay.
Ijinsho is, I would say it's much larger than any map they've done before, but they do a good job making it feel dense, and also just like the fast travel taxis are more plentiful. And it just feels like there's more points of interest. The mini games in this one really pop off. Like, you have a whole Mario Kart mini game that's kind of on the level of like Nightmare Kart. The business management mini game is much better.
So they've gotten better at the mini games.
Yes.
Okay. That was a big complaint when I finally entered the fray during the Fist of the North Star app. But I'm glad that they're learning from mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And also, like, because it's a JRPG, Kasuga acquires allies, and you play them in combat. You can have a party up to 4, counting Kasuga.
So the other two questions, let's do another one now that you're saying that.
Sure.
Tell me about the combat. Like, you're sort of saying around the RPG thing. How is the actual combat of the game?
So I would say it's kind of like it's brawler combat, where it's really flashy and has these options, but it's kind of wide as an ocean, shallow as a puddle.
Okay.
I would say for most of the game, like, the game has a job system, where, you know, you can take on all these different roles, like a chef, an enforcer, a pop idol, and then get different like skills based on how your job rank is, and those become like permanent part of your character no matter what job you have. And so you acquire a lot of different options in battle, but most of the game, I'm gonna say like 90% of the game, just doing like the most damaging AoE attack is gonna get you through most encounters, if not all of them. And then right at like the third to last chapter, you face a boss that is 30 levels higher than you, and you need to go grind. And
that's not exciting.
well, normally, normally I would be upset about that. Like, that's one of those roadblocks, those moments that slow the pacing that have like annoyed me about this game. And that's also in a chapter where it's like right before that grinding section. It's like, go grind 3 million yen, you know. But at the same time, they have you like have that hard difficulty spike. They also introduce the battle arena, where you can go in and just do more of the combat's shallow, but what sells me on it is the flashiness, and also like the enemy designs and encounters are just, they just really tickle me. Like, you know, it has this level of, I'm assuming the Earthbound games do this, where it's sort of like a magical realism, the world seen through the eyes of like children.
Yes. 100%.
Where it's like, oh, I'm fighting hippies, I'm fighting a cult leader, I'm fighting 100%. Fishermen.
Yep. Or a good one I use is abstract art, where a kid doesn't know what abstract art is, so it's hostile to them.
Yeah, and so it's taking that idea, like sort of these class ideas you would see in a JRPG built around children protagonists, but
doing it for a grown-ass man.
But it's a grown-ass man, and so it's stuff like one of the classes is a clerk, and you're attacking with like a staple remover and throwing scissors and stuff like that. Or, you know, one of them is a chef, and you're cheese grating people or grinding pepper in their eyes. And it's just fun. And all of your 7 party members all have unique dialogue depending on what class they are. That also helps. This has a really good English dub cast. In fact, they bring back a lot of the dub actors from the PS2 Yakuza game.
Is this the first one since whenever to do a dub?
Judgment had a dub.
Okay.
I guess this would be the first like mainline, like Yakuza in the name.
Yeah, and
as a
Fist of the
dub.
North Star also had a dub. Yeah, so it'd be
That's
the first
true,
main
yeah.
line. Yeah. Yeah.
But like the first time I'm hearing characters is like of the franchise in English.
Talk. That led to my third major question, which is how much connective tissue is there between Like a Dragon and the previous Yakuza games and story? Like, who comes back?
So, quite a few like Goro Majima comes back because he's like alongside Kiryu one of the poster boys for the franchise. But a lot of that is really at the end. I would say this is pretty accessible as long as you go in with the mindset that like at one point a dude's gonna walk on screen and he's gonna be given all this gravitas and like, oh my god, it's him, you know? And you're just gonna be like, oh, that's like a character from Yakuza 6 or whatever. But that's
Yeah.
really all at the end, and it's kind of like glorified cameos, more or less.
Sure. Sure.
I think the main thing you'd be missing out on is the significance of the ending, because this ends on like a very definitive, we are moving forward with this new, like, you know, the next game's not even gonna have Yakuza in the name. You know,
Yeah.
this is no longer about crime families, right? And I think that moment would probably lose a lot of like oomph if this was your first one. But otherwise, I think it's weirdly the most grounded while also being the most wacky Yakuza. This is a very funny game. This is silly, but also it has stuff with like the realities of being homeless and trying to find a job when you're an ex-con and things like that. Like the dialogue gets pretty real at points, but I would say the plot never gets as convoluted as like the most convoluted plots this series has been known for. I would say this is like up there with Yakuza 4 for me in terms of how readable the plot is.
You said this was your favorite Yakuza, so that means this is going in like S tier.
I think so, and I think it's so S tier, it's kind of causing me to reconfigure the hierarchy of how I've been ranking these so far. Like last Yakuza Minute, I said Judgment was an A tier. Now that I have time away from this and I've played this, I think that's more like a B tier. I think I may move Yakuza 0 down to A tier even. Because looking back, like Yakuza
Now you
0,
have a higher standard.
and also just, you know, again, recency bias is a thing with this, but I think this game has a very good like closing act. And I think that this is going to stick with me longer than a lot of these games have. Like, I love a good RPG party, and I love walking away from a RPG game being like, man, I love this band of idiots, you know?
Yeah.
I
The
think
ragtag team.
Yeah, I think this game has good energy for that.
Yeah. So in that sense, are you excited for the future?
I am, because there's only 4 games left. Next one up is going to be
far.
Lost Judgment, the sequel to Judgment.
I didn't even realize they made a sequel to that. That's crazy. Is that the same genre, or what genre is this?
I think it's a Judgment-like. It's still going to be a detective game with brawler elements. Like, I haven't heard any other difference.
Oh, my goodness.
And then there's going to be Yakuza Ishin, which is the period piece.
Okay.
Set in the Edo period. Then Yakuza Gaiden, the man who erased his name, which is basically what was Kiryu doing between Yakuza 6 and his 5-minute cameo in this game.
Yeah.
And then it will be Yakuza Infinite Wealth. Or sorry, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth.
So, I mean, you have like, you're near the end. Are you a fan now?
That is difficult to say. I think just by obligation at this point, the time investment, but I think it's more a circumstance where I am a fan of specific entries and aspects rather than as a whole. Like if they were to announce like a new Yakuza game, like if they had done that like last week at the Sony showcase or something, I'm not sure my like hype level would be through the roof, mainly because they pumped out a lot of these in like the last 4 years, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas something like the Resident Evil playthrough, like, I consider myself, like, fully a fan of Resident Evil. Like, I would sit and talk about, like, the worst entries in that franchise.
You
Whereas,
know,
like,
it helps so much with runtime. The
yeah.
fact that they were shorter and also more varied helps Resident Evil a lot. Where it's like there was a lot of S tier games or A tier games, and then even the C, D tier games were interesting and thought provoking and like mattered in the grand scale.
Mm-hmm. Whereas something like with Yakuza, like, a lot of the C, B, D tier entries are kind of blurring together for me. Where I'm like,
Yeah.
which one had that plot point? Which one revealed the guy everyone should recognize was the guy no one recognized? Was that 5 or was that 4? I'm not really sure anymore.
Sure.
But I think Yakuza Like a Dragon is a great revitalization for the franchise, and I love Ichiban Kasuga so much.
Okay. Well, damn. All right. Well, I think that is a glowing review. Murph, are you ready for the Variety Minute?
Let's get Nextfest, y'all.
All right, everyone. This week's Variety Minute is Steam Summer Nextfest, which is sort of a promotional thing for upcoming games. Some of them are indie, some of them are big developers, or bigger. You know what I mean? Just because they do something small. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we've done this before with I didn't realize Nextfest was like a reoccurring throughout the year. I thought it was like once a year. So I was a bit surprised when I was like, yeah, the summer Nextfest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there
but
were some good picks this time around. We have like a lot.
Yeah, I definitely like a lot of these demos were shorter, and that's why I played more of them.
Yeah.
Let's start with the shortest one, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The Riven remake.
Okay, let me come in real quick because it's Riven. I want to say formally, I like Riven a lot now.
You have found Riven to have a long tail for you.
It was like a seed that planted. If you listen back, I was like, I don't know, I kind of like it. Like it's now turned into a full-on appreciation. I get it. I 100% get the game now, and I don't know if I love it more than Myst. I think it's one of those things where I personally love it more, but I understand your point of view enough to where it's like I'm not actually going to argue against you for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That being said, we both agree. Myst has had like a bajillion remakes. Riven has had no remakes. Riven needed a remake. So in that sense, I think this is a very important game. And I think it was also very interesting what they were going to be able to do in a 3D space. And they changed some things around.
That was driving me crazy that they moved one of the rooms.
Yes, they moved one of the rooms. They changed one of the... It's not even a puzzle. I hesitate to call it a puzzle. But the way you get in a door is different.
Yeah, and there's no crawl under option in this. This is in the line of the Myst Unreal 5, where the main appeal is you're not playing a slideshow. You can actually walk around in these environments. And that's, like, to me, the main thing you could do to punch up a Riven remake. Because Riven looks fantastic still, right? Like, straight up photoreal graphics. So the fact they were able to translate that into a 3D space...
It looks good.
It looks as good as, like, the still frames of Riven did, while still retaining a lot of, like, the mise-en-scène, the framing of everything.
And there's even like some angles, because it's a 3D space, there's some angles you can see now that you couldn't see before. And because of that, I think it's so cool. I'm like or the draw distance, like you can see further into the ocean now, and there's a lot more detail in things. I don't know, man. I'm a fan already.
I
I'm
always
sold.
felt like that Riven would probably benefit from having the free camera the most, because a lot of that game is the puzzles are like, oh, try to figure out this like maze from a top-down view, or figure out where these pipes go, and that's just
Yeah.
hard to do at the screen-by-screen level that the original Riven was made at. Being able to like move your camera and actually follow along, that would probably help a lot. And also because Riven's more about being in like a place,
Yeah.
it would probably help with the immersive aspect. I was so interested to like see the village and things like that,
yes.
how they would handle
I'm
that.
fascinated.
Unfortunately, this is just like the first five
island.
minutes of Riven.
Yeah. It's before you get to the second island, which is within 5 minutes of the game. Yeah.
They probably, you know what? They probably moved that room because if you could just do that, the demo would be over in like 1 minute, right?
That's 100% one of the reasons. I don't know if they probably move it back for base or not, but that's probably one of the big reasons why. Yeah. And also, I wanted to say the one thing that's there's two big things I want to say before we move off this topic. Number one is that the one thing I'm really hesitant about and what I'm worried about in the 3D space is like there's like, I think following along the pipes or something, or having a logical sense of space is important, and the 3D space would do that. But there's also some times where there's you look at a screen in Riven and you have to click all over the screen for maybe a button. I'm worried that you won't be able to find a button.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I know from the Myst Unreal 5 remake they changed a lot of the interfacing with certain things. Mainly because that game was meant to be done in VR, so they made it more VR-like, with like, oh, instead of a button, you turn a crank, and things like that. So I think we'll be fine for like the readability, findability of things. I thought you were going to bring up like, oh, the problem is going to be the backtracking that Riven has. Instead of just like mashing click on the center of the screen, you now have to physically walk these paths.
That reminds me as well. You also can't, it's one of those things so on the demo island, there's like a switch that rotates a room, right?
Yes.
And in Riven, you can, after you figure out the button, you can skip the cutscene. You can't skip the cutscene now. It's a double-edged sword where the animation has to play because it's a real 3D space, so you can't skip a cutscene, but you can also do something else while the cutscene happens, or while the room turns. Does that make sense? So in that, I'm also hesitant. I'm like, is this going to work or not? I don't know.
And I could see people coming in for like never playing Riven before, but playing this, being like, well, why can't I walk into the room right before it turns? You know?
And it's like, that's not how it works.
It
I
might
don't know.
We'll have to see. I'm interested to go back to Riven in this format.
The other thing I wanted to say, the last thing, is I didn't feel it a lot in the Myst game. I felt it here with the 3D model of Atris. I was like, oh, I do miss the FMV guy.
Yeah.
It's missing here. It sucks, but it is what it is.
The 3D model they have is better than the ones they had in the Myst remake.
Yes.
But with the Myst remake, down the line, they made it so you could turn on, like, swap those for the FMVs.
Yes, 100%. There's no way they're going to be able to do that here.
No. So I think it may just lose something there. But time
it is what it is.
Forward.
Are you gonna try the remake at one point?
I'm definitely gonna try it.
I will probably buy it. I don't know if I'll buy it day one, but like before the end of the year, I will play Riven again. Yeah. So, but before then, Murph.
Speaking of reinventing in 3D spaces,
Metal Slug Tactics has had a demo for Nextfest.
I'm kicking myself that I never got around to trying this out while the demo was still active.
So what's interesting is this game had not been like talked about since its announcement for like a fucking year, maybe 2 years.
I think it's 2.
I think it's 2. That's fucking crazy. But the game is coming out in the fall. It feels like a complete game. You play it, and it's kind of simple for a tactics game, but it's effective, and it's also punishing. And it's punishing in the way Metal Slug is. Simple and punishing, just like the arcade game. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, don't fuck up. The moment you fuck up, you're done. Thankfully, there's a lot of mechanics that sort of are forgiving. There's a lot of takebacks. There's a lot of revivals. The revival is a resource because you only have 3 party members, and you could obviously there are more party members in the main game, and then later on you have to beat the demo to unlock Tarma, for instance. What's interesting is that each character has their own weapon loadout, and then it's sort of like a roguelike in the sense that the missions are generated per run, and then it's also the upgrades are generated per run. So when you do it, you're like, okay, do I want this, this special ability that will give Theo extra health when she hits an enemy, or do I want this instead? So there's a risk reward there that's super fun. It's not that complex of a tactics game, but there's nice elements. I like the synergy element where if you're in the same space as another party member, and you're shooting at the same, or like you're shooting at someone within eye line, they will also shoot too. Very simple but effective. And you also have to be careful because I don't remember her name. The blonde has a grenade launcher, so you have to be very mindful of like, oh, I don't want to blow up. And then also it has the thing of like Metal Slugs. They have the actual vehicles in the game. It would be a damn shame if Metal Slug didn't have a Metal Slug in it. And the tanks are big. They are meaningful. They're like, oh my god, I want to get in this thing as soon as possible because this makes or breaks the game. And there's also the typical things of like side goals to your main goal. Let's say your goal is to kill all enemies, but there's a side goal where you have to kill five enemies as Theo. That means you get all your special ammunition back. So that's a big deal, and you want to do that. That's not a side thing that you can ignore. That's a thing you have to actively consider in battle. And because of that, I think the game's really fun.
Let me ask you this, because this is our first like Metal Slug game in a while that's like new art assets and things like that. Like they released like a mobile game that for some reason is getting a remake for the Switch, but that is reusing all the art from like the previous games. Does this have the Metal Slug stank to it?
It doesn't show up in like to me, I don't know your definition of the Metal Slug stank. I think there is pretty pixel art in the game, if that's what you're talking about. Like, for instance, the major boss of the demo is one of those giant warships, and you have to go around falling debris of like every turn. Parts of the platforms fall off, so you're constantly moving, trying to shoot at the thing, shoot at enemies, and move off the platforms. And visually, it's a huge treat. But to me, the Metal Slug stank is the transformable elements to it. So like when Marco gets fat or becomes a zombie, those are the moments where I'm like, oh my god, this game is crazy.
Okay.
And they don't have those moments yet, but I am sure that that's an actual element within the game that's just not seen yet.
Okay, but it feels like a worthy, like, 20 years later we got a new Metal Slug game and it's a tactics game, right?
This is a game I will be buying. I kind of don't care about the mobile port of Metal Slug. I'm like, whatever, this tower defense, it's mostly an idle game that.
Yeah.
This is like a real tangible like game. And there are new art assets. It looks pretty. And it's good. I would highly recommend this game. And I will buy it when it comes out.
Mm-hmm. I would bet a 500 caliber bullet would be a pretty metallic slug.
Murph, you literally played this like 5 hours ago, right?
I did.
What were your thoughts on
500 caliber
this?
contracts.
This shit's crazy, right?
This game is a vibe. You know
yes,
what I'm saying? What if Mario 64 was MySpace?
Oh, and then he had like a gun, but you don't use the gun to kill things most of the time. Most of the time you use it for propelling yourself.
It's so hard to explain the aesthetic of this game, but if you just showed someone they would be like, oh yeah, it's that. It's like the mid 2000s hot topic. We're gonna do chibi-fied like characters, but then their stories are gonna be like, this is Agathar Bloodrain. He killed his mother when he was 6 years old. You know?
Yeah, and then also like it's right before the iPod, or like it's like right when the Sony Walkman had CDs, and like in 2 years the iPod's gonna come out and change everything, but we're not there yet, baby.
There's a banner that's like PowerPoint word art.
Oh my gosh, it's fun. It's so fun. Like, and the thing to not understate is the movement. The movement in this game is fucking crazy, because the base movement of you running is very, very fucking slow, but all of your other abilities propel you forward so fucking fast, or have different vertical elements to it, that the game is just fun to like input shit and move around and try to master that.
The momentum was what really caught me, because you sort of have like an air dash thing that you can like kind of pop off twice, or you can like jump, air dash, land, jump again, air dash. And then like if you don't jump and air dash again, your character will like have all this speed build up, and then that will gradually go away at like what feels like a very natural like rate. It's like I'm running, okay, now I'm walking, you know?
Yes. And that's
it kind
so
of feels
crazy
like the momentum that like a 3D Sonic game should have.
Yes, 100%. I know exactly what you mean. Whereas like this feels very smooth. One of the nice things about Mario is Mario's movement feels very natural, especially in Mario 64, and it feels very natural here too, even when you're going so fucking fast. And also, I want to talk about the levels, like the level structure, with the way the platforms are, and the way the pipes are, and the way the wind works. All of that is so fucking fun to navigate. And it's so telling that the major missions, or the side missions of the game, where you like get little stars for the side objectives,
it's like Tony Hawk Pro Skater, where it's like explore the level.
Yes, and you know, like you're totally okay with that. You're like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's like so many movement options. Like you have an air dash, you have a vault from like standing on the ground. If you jump and don't move and fire your gun, you'll fire it straight down and get a vertical boost. But you can also you can also, if you're moving and firing, you can use it as a second air dash, right? Yes. But that one doesn't reload. You have to like wait after landing to reload your gun. And what the game is, for like people that are so fascinated by everything we're saying, it's like you're plonked into like a 3D platforming level, and you are a contract killer looking for like a vantage point to shoot a guy, you know. But it's
and you can do that within 30 seconds.
Yes. But it's also about exploring the level, getting collectibles and things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's super great. I would highly recommend checking out this demo. And like, it's so fun. Like, I think the atmosphere of the game, beyond even the MySpace element to it. Because like, yeah, you're right. Like a lot of the character designs is very edgy MySpace, or like even like, I don't know if you remember it. I think it's called Playground Interactive. It's the one that on Newgrounds with the bodies. I don't remember how to describe.
Oh, Interactive Buddy.
Yes, stuff like that, where it's got like the orbs to them. Either way, but like also it has that enthusiast that like the mission is not just kill a guy; it's kill a rich guy. Yes. And it has a very like you go down to the bottom part of the factory, the level's a factory level, and you see people host a party, and the party's like, we hired you to kill our boss. We don't like our boss. Please murder him. And you're like, all right, dude, let's fucking do this.
And the dialogue is done as like an AIM chat box.
Oh my gosh.
While you can still move around while the dialogue is going, that was like a neat touch.
Yeah. No,
I like the guy where you find him and he's like, this server has 25 terabyte, can do like 25 terabytes of data. We tried to host a Halo 1 game on it, and we're chopped up into pieces.
That's so funny. I will for sure play this game when it comes out. I think this is like I don't know if it's a gem. I don't know how popular this is. But to me, this is like a culturally significant game.
I'll play this. If you need any more selling, dear listener, like the main menu is like a desktop PC where you like have to click on icons and stuff. And one of them is like myvideo.wav.
Oh, dude, it's a fucking Windows Movie Maker.
Yes, set to like a Shinigami song, like, like I feel so alive, and it's like here's neat tricks and tips for your game, and it's like, oh my god, I watched those to learn how to do Kingdom Hearts 2 combos. Like,
this is true nostalgia right here.
This person gets it. This developer gets it.
But Murph, you played a game called Lorne's Lure.
So this is another like kind of platforming game. It's easier to make this comparison now because the Elden Ring DLC just came out. You know how like FromSoft platforming or like level exploration is sometimes like, no, this just really is the path forward. Like, no, you're not supposed to like follow this bridge all the way down. You're supposed to notice that there's a broken part in the railing and drop down onto these rooftops down below.
Where it feels like you're kind of breaking the game, but you actually aren't.
Yeah, so imagine that for a first-person, like, exploration game. What this is, you are a robot who is following this strange signal that's coming out of, like, this massive mega structure in the middle of this desert. And he's just drawn to this signal. That is Lorne's Lure. And inside, you, like, enter the mega structure, which is like this weird like factory thing, or it's like unclear in the demo, right? But you find some climbing axes, and so now you can climb on any surface within reason. Like, you have a stamina meter, and you also have a jump and an air dash, and when you find like a slanted surface, you can slide down that to build up a momentum and jump. And you're kind of just dropped into this huge level and just like find the exit, and so it kind of has that like a FromSoft level design where it's like, no, the path forward is just straight up over here. You notice like these kind of interconnecting like pipes up above, and it seems so far and out of reach that it's like, oh, that's got to be like an invisible wall up there, but no, you really just climb up there and it's like, oh, here's the path forward, right? And I think that the immersion and the atmosphere of the game is very on point. Like, remember when I said like it's neat that like the Fallout 1 soundtrack, it's like the sound of falling metal,
yes,
interlaced with music. That this game has that, right?
Oh, that's so fun.
It just has that energy, and you're kind of also finding like records of the people that lived here, and the robots like kind of wondering, well, like what happened to these people. They're also mentioning the signal. Like, it has this great like mystery about it as you're just climbing through these ruins. So I'm kind of interested to see the full release. I picked it up from the Nextfest because I've been following this dev on Twitter, and they'll just post like clips every now and again. Like, I've added in a double jump, but you have to find out where the double jump is, and things like that.
That sounds so much fun. Did you find the double jump?
I didn't. I think that's later in the game, not in the demo.
Oh, okay. That's not. They didn't treat you to that. No, but that sounds like so much fun. I'm interested in this game. I've seen this game on Twitter as well. It didn't make sense when I saw the title, but when I looked it up, I was like, oh, it's that game. You see this game when you like look at indie stuff. Yeah, that's so fun. I played a game called Dungeons of Hinterberg.
This was at one of those showcases last year. I think it was in the Xbox.
Yeah,
showcase?
I think this was. Yep.
Because we thought it was like 3D Celeste at first.
Yes, it kind of looks like that art style, and it has like this. I'm trying to think of how to say it. There's like two elements to it. Like, the main quest structure is very like personal and down to earth. You're just like you're a girl trying to get a pass to whatever. What's nice is there's like a town, there's like friends, side quests, etc., etc. But then when you get the demo, at least, has you go to a mountain, and then the mountain has this sort of magic thing to it. Have a dungeon, you go into the dungeon, but the magic abilities, this is the important part to talk about. There's two of them. One is a giant beam, is actually mostly used to solve puzzles, where it's like a projectile. Beam. It's a beam, but it's a projectile mostly used to hit targets.
Oh, a beam like a Kamehameha. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a Kamehameha, and then it's also there's also like a surfboard skateboard.
Huh.
And whenever we do the Jack 2 episode, dear listener, I will stand on 2 feet and proudly proclaim that just being randomly able in a game to get on a skateboard and skate is super badass.
I agree. It is cool that Kingdom Hearts 2 lets you do that.
Sure. And I think what was most interesting to me is when you do the dungeon, it also like the different every segment of the levels have a different vibe to them. So like the town vibe of you chilling is different from the mountain, which has a little bit more guided side quest vibe to it. And then once you get to the dungeons are formatted in a very spherical way. It feels like a Mario Galaxy or a Ratchet and Clank, specifically when you're on spheroid planets. And you're going through and like you're like, oh, I need to get on my skateboard to grind this rail to the next planet, and then you're fighting things. I think the combat is probably the least interesting part of this game, but it's also not obtrusive enough for me to complain about it. All right, yeah. So the magic abilities are actually serviceable. Like the beam is very useful in combat, and the skateboard leaves a trail of fire in combat. So you are actively using them during combat. So I don't actually have a lot to complain about other than the literal hitting of things. I would hope playing the game that you unlock more abilities to make that combat more engaging. And I also want more enemy variety in the main game. But that being said, the total experience was very comfy.
I can also talk about a game where the it's comfy, but the combat isn't great.
Yeah.
I played the demo for Fading Skies.
What's the deal with this?
So I think that the main holdback on this demo is that I think this is more in an alpha state than like a lot of these games are. The main thing this was on my radar was, you know how there was that like Twitter meme in May that was like, show me your game and the 3 inspirations behind it.
Yes.
The dev for Fading Skies said, oh, this is our game, and the inspirations are Jack 1, Kingdom Hearts 1, and Breath of the Wild.
Oh, so it's like Murph core.
And I was like, oh, my neuron has been activated, right?
Yes. And looking at the pictures, you can see the Jack 1 inspiration.
Mm-hmm. This has a definite, like, PS2 mascot platformer. We're going to do something that's, like, magical and, like, something like that. There's no getting around it that someone on the art team is definitely 100% a furry. Like, there's cat people, and they just look like straight-up fursuits, and that's just unavoidable to notice.
All right.
But
good for them.
But the game is, you're like this girl with amnesia on this sort of collection of floating islands, being guided by this cat person, and she has this little Kitty Pryde Lockheed dragon thing with her, that makes little sounds, and she's looking for these floating ruins, so she can regain her memory and charge like this bracelet that she has that she doesn't remember like equipping. And for the most part of the demo, you don't have any combat. There's enemies about, but you kind of just have to avoid them, and it's mostly trying to show you the platforming. And again, like the combat that I'll get into later, the platforming isn't like 100% there yet. A lot of polish is missing from this, but I think the art direction and the aesthetic is on point, and that's why I'm more looking forward to it. Midpoint through the demo, you do unlock combat, and she kind of has this combat style of like Noctis from Final Fantasy 15, where she just kind of like summons different weapons as she attacks. Okay. Like you have a sword, and then the heavy attack is like you summon like a big axe, and then you can like summon a bow and use that for ranged attacks. So you're trying to do like these mix-ups in combat, just flowing from one weapon to another. And like I said, it's just a bit stiff feeling. It doesn't flow right. And I think that's because it's like has these very more like less like Jack 1 and more like Ratchet and Clank of like, you know, you're doing platforming, here's a combat arena and you're going to stop the platforming and now you're platforming again. Whereas
There's
Jack,
not that much combat in Jack 1.
no,
There's like a couple moments.
Jack 1's more about like an enemy is there as like a just like a little roadblock. That is an obstacle. The solution, like jumping over a gap, the solution is punch the enemy, you know?
Yeah.
And it's also not like Kingdom Hearts, where it sort of like stops and locks you into that combat arena, you know?
Yeah.
The combat's also not floaty like Kingdom Hearts. I think the Kingdom Hearts comparison is more for the vibes, you know?
What are the vibes to Kingdom Hearts? I want you to tell me. I'm so curious.
If we're talking about Kingdom Hearts 1 specifically, constant uncertainty. And if you want me to elaborate on that, we'll just have to do an episode on it.
Fair enough. All right, continue.
Yeah, I just don't have much more to say because right after combat is introduced, the demo kind of ends, and it's like, well, you can just explore more of this open area. Like I said, I want this to be good. I want to keep an eye on it. I don't think that this was ready for Nextfest. Just where it's at. It feels more student project than like indie release at this stage.
I wanted to say the way you describe this does not seem like a typical Nextfest game because like literally, dear viewer or dear listener, when you look at the Steam Nextfest games, Riven Remake, that's out in 2 weeks. Most of these games are nearing completion. And so they're giving a demo to sort of excite you. Whereas this sounds like this is something that won't be out for another year.
Yeah, and that's what the true worry is that it's going to be out in the next, like, couple months. And this is how it's going to play, right?
Yeah.
So, I wish the devs the best of luck. I think they have something here I think they definitely have captured this, like, PS2, GameCube era, something like Star Fox Adventures aesthetic and vibe. I think they just need to polish up the gameplay quite a bit more.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it.
But, you know, the thing, it's something I love just as much as PS2 era platforms is getting into a groove.
Oh, it's another groove getter. Oh, no. Murph, you are my beast.
I played I Am Your Beast. Okay, so what if Super Hot, but we removed the main gimmick of Super Hot?
You're not selling me.
So this is a game about being dropped into combat arenas, and you have to kill all the guys in it while trying to like take as little damage as possible, doing as quick as possible, because that's how you up your rank, right? And when you kill a guy, you can take his gun, and when you're out of bullets in that gun, you can throw the gun at someone, and they will drop their gun, and it will fly to you, and you can catch it and shoot them with it.
How different is this from like a first-person Hotline Miami? Because when you say super hot without super hot, I think Hotline Miami except top-down instead of first-person.
I guess with Super Hot, I was thinking more the specific element of throwing your gun at someone to kill them and then take their gun.
Okay, sure. I get that. Sure, that makes sense.
Is it fun? The framing and plot of this is that you are some sort of like John Wick type figure. You're out of the game, you've settled in the woods, and then like the CIA or whatever are like, we need you for one final mission this time. And your guy just kind of snaps and is like, no, I am retired. I have done 5 final missions, you know? And so they're just sending dudes into his home, this winter forest, to try and like capture him and bring him into the fold, and he just keeps killing them. It doesn't really have cutscenes. It has like narration with like text appearing on screen, and I think that's well done because the main guy's like voice actor just has this very like matter-of-fact way of like saying things. It's just like, no, like, dude, if you keep sending dudes in, I'm gonna kill them. I'll keep killing them until you stop sending dudes in. And the guy on the other line is like, "You're being unreasonable. You gotta do this for your country." You know.
Yeah.
It's a nice like vibe. The demo is 3 levels that are kind of spread out. Like I feel like these aren't this isn't the order you're gonna do them in. It's like here's the first level, here's the 3rd level, and here's the 17th level to kind of give you an idea of how it progresses and gets more complicated.
Yeah.
The flow is pretty good. With something like this where it's like kill X dudes in the specific arena, what you want is a clear path that you can follow, and what you're optimizing more is like your inputs, right? That's how you get in the groove. It's almost there. There's one thing holding it up, and that is tree climbing. They have this mechanic where you can see like barren tree branches, and you have to like really you have to look at them and press F, and your character will just like jump up to the branch. But you kind of need to like be right on the branch with like your cursor in order to do that.
How similar is that to Half-Life?
I think it's different here because Half-Life was more like actually climbing the thing, right? This is just like looking at a branch and clicking a button.
Sure.
And then once you're on the branch, you're kind of locked on there. You can't jump off unless it's like a specific branch that you're supposed to like jump off it onto like a nearby cliff or something. So it just kind of feels awkward and stops your momentum. Because I was like, what am I doing? I was thinking, oh, well, jump up on this branch and then jump off it to land on this guy and do like the stomp attack and take him out. But that didn't work because I couldn't get off the branch for whatever reason. And I was like, oh, I have to go from this branch to the branch like above it, and that's the one I can jump off on. And that's just like weird, right?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. That's not intuitive.
Yeah. So I think there is something here as far as a connoisseur of groove getters goes. I would be looking forward to the full release of this.
Okay, well, that's exciting. Murph, we both played this game, Big Boy Boxing. This is basically a Punch-Out clone. However, it's quite different in some ways, and in some ways, I don't like it. I don't think I like this
game. In our PAX West special, because I played this at PAX and was very disappointed.
Has it improved since then?
This is better than the PAX West demo, but it's still a little funky, right? And it's something you kind of have to play and feel and be familiar with Punch-Out games. Because it's weirdly committal with the animations, isn't it? Like, yes. There's something's off, like you get locked in.
Yes. Well, I don't want to say that because you also commit in Punch-Out. I think I don't know if it's a delay or it just feels so weird. There's something off about it. I think a lot of that goes actually not to how you control, but how the bosses are. The bosses don't seem to be sensical to me.
The bosses are like animated at 1,000 frames per second, and that's something I like about this game is that it has its own unique like aesthetic. It looks like a CDI game and not like the Zelda CDI, like something like Eugene Levy's Wacky World of Mini Golf. Like it has that animation aesthetic, which I think is very charming. But there's something where like when I'm saying like you get locked in, it's like in Punch-Out, like when a boss is doing a wind up, you dodge, right?
Yes.
And then if you time it poorly, you take the hit, but you can just keep dodging, right? Whereas this, it's like when the boss is doing a wind up for an attack, and then once it's in the process of making that attack, you can no longer dodge anymore, but the attacks take so long to actually come out that it feels like you should still be able to dodge. And that's why I'm saying like it feels like you get locked in for just I think the dodge timing needs to have a few more frames or something. I'm not sure. It just doesn't feel right.
There's a lot of like tweaking this game needs. I don't know what it is. I think a big problem also is the fact that it's like 3 hits. There's no get up. Like in Punch-Out, if you get knocked down, you get up. Like Lil Matt can get up.
Yeah, there's no rounds to this.
There's no rounds. That's not sensical. It's literally just you get hit 3 times and you're fucking done.
Yeah.
And in that, I feel like the way they're animated, I agree in the sense that I think the character design is strong and I think how they are modeled, like their forms of attack, what like their behaviors. I think all that's really cool and really smart. I feel like sometimes it's misplaced. Like for instance, that first battle with that boy that like grows into like a super buff guy, I just like cleared him super fast. I literally just like kept hitting him. Like that's not even like, it didn't make sense to me. I think one of the better. Go ahead.
If you get through them, like the bosses are very fast, like very fast. And that was something that was changed up from the PAX demo, because the PAX demo I was like I did two bosses. I did the guy with the shades who keeps showing you his ass.
Yes.
And then also the three kids in a trench coat.
That one's a good one.
And I was just stuck on those at the PAX demo, just like hard stuck. And then, you know, it could be like time, like clear head. I'm not at a conference or whatever, but I beat those both in one go. And it did feel more like the game had been tweaked since then.
Yeah, and I think they probably will tweak it still even after this demo. But even then, I feel like this needs a lot of tweaking in certain ways. The game doesn't feel right, and I'm wondering if it's the boss thing or if it's the health system or what. But it feels like a rough boss rush. It doesn't feel very sensical.
It feels rude in spots. Like the boss in this that I got like stuck on is the final one, which is like their King Hippo equivalent, which is like, it's like funny, right? That his like setup is he didn't meet weight, so he drank an entire pool and now he's sick, and you fight him like that. But like he starts the match with like this 2-frame like belly flop, and you have to hit him in the head to stop him. But like the timing on that is so tight, and that's how it starts every match. And it's like, I don't have like the time, like, you know, if you're not locked in from second one, you're just going to take a free hit.
I had that feeling with you have a trainer in the game, and the trainer has like a brother, and the brother is one of the people you fight in the game. And I had that vibe. That was like the first one where I was like, oh, I have to actually, that was the first boss I had to pay attention. And that first 5 seconds, I was like, oh, I can't fuck up these first 5 seconds. And I feel like that's there's very little wiggle room. And I guess like in a boss rush game, the fact that you could replay the boss, the fact that you can engage however you want, like I can't blame it. I can't knock it. But it's that frustration doesn't feel genuine. That frustration doesn't feel fair, you know?
Yeah, whereas something like any Punch-Out, it feels like you are learning the fight.
Yes, 100%.
You know, you're building some sort of like meta rapport with these opponents, these Piston Hondos, these Soda Popinskis. Whereas this, I think it may be that like I think the enemies may only have like 3 or 4 actual attacks, if that.
Yes, but they're so fast that you have to pay attention.
Yeah, and so it doesn't really feel like I'm like having this back and forth. It feels like I am memorizing 2 specific patterns.
Yes. Yep.
The 100%. Other thing with the demo is this has like 9 bosses, right? In the demo.
Yep.
Which makes me wonder how many are in the full game, especially with how
I don't want
quick
like fucking 30.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, Punch-Out would also do this thing where they would have the same bosses, but they would sort of elaborate and make them more complex or make them more engaging. And in that, maybe I'm hoping that's the case, where there's actually about, you know, like 15 unique bosses, and they just bring some back for a more reasonable or a more like even-handed approach. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I feel like this is going to be a case of like 30 bosses, and they're all going to feel like these 9 bosses. And I'm not crazy about that.
No, like it's so like, I'm glad you're with me on this like feeling of like disappointment, and it's like it's so close. It has the idea, and we just don't get Punch-Out likes, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, here's like a pretty high profile indie Punch-Out, and it just doesn't have the feel right.
You know, it's one of those things where it's like, this is a game that's, I think, I haven't done it, but I would bet that this game is way better to watch than it is to play.
Yeah.
And I would probably watch this game. I would probably watch a streamer play it or a let's player play it and be like, oh, this boss, this is the strategy to do it. But I don't feel like replaying these bosses over and over again to get these things. Now there are bonus like mission objectives in this game, but like unlike games we've previously mentioned, I don't feel particularly incentivized to do those side missions or like those side objectives.
Especially because, like we said, the bosses are kind of obnoxious. Like, one of them is like a little girl and she has a huge hammer. And one of the challenges is only hit her when she's jumping. And it's like, no, I'm not going to do that because then this fight's going to be way longer,
Yes.
And we've already established there's not really a lot going on.
Yep. There's no incentive to do it. It doesn't make the fight more engaging either. You know? So it is what it is. I don't know. But could you say that there's a lot of foul damage?
There is. So I played a demo called Foul Damage. That's foul as in the bird. This one is weird. This one has such a strange energy coming off it that I can't describe. You play a little egg with a smiley face on it. And you are in a derelict factory. And you're trying to find your way out, and then a giant robot arm attacks you. And what the game is it's a puzzle platformer. Because you're an egg, you can't take, like, fall damage. You'll crack and die. But you have a weirdly high jump. Like, if you just jump neutral, you will not survive that, because you just go up too high. So what you're looking for is something that's like just a platform that's just at the apex of your jump, and right as you're like arcing down, you land on that. And then if you're trying to get down, you're looking for a platform that's like just low enough that you can fall on it without breaking.
That seems really frustrating.
You know what? It works. It really works for this, at least for this demo level. Because immediately, once, like, I understood the distance it took to, like, do the fall damage, I was like, you start seeing the levels in terms of that. Like, immediately figuring out the path on sight. Like, oh, I've got to go up to here, and then I roll down to here, and then I jump up to here, so I can roll down to here, And then in the last act, it throws in this robot arm boss that will chase you, and if you linger in one spot too long, it'll, like, crush you. So you have to constantly be moving and solving on the fly.
Yeah.
When I say, like, the energy coming off this is weird, like I said, you're a smiling little egg. But it has, like, this weirdly derelict tone to everything with, like, the sound design. Like, it has that Lorne's Lure Fallout 1 soundtrack, which is weird.
So weird. Yeah,
like,
for a platformer? Yeah.
Yeah, it's got, like, this dark techno beat to it, like, when the robot shows up. So it's like, it's this weirdly hostile world, but also you're a smiling little egg, and you don't want to break your shell. And also there's collectibles, there's, like, feathers on each screen, and you're trying to, like, collect those without breaking and moving on to the next screen. I got all but one of them, and I, for the life of me, cannot figure out how to get the last one.
This game, I don't know why, it looks like Animal Well to me.
It does. It does have the Animal Well and Rain World feeling to it. Where it's just like, there's something going on here. I'm not sure what, but this can't just be a game about a little smiling egg friend.
That's so weird. I'm interested in this game. And it releases in September. That's reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's worth checking out.
Wow. I am interested. Consider me interested.
Brogan.
Huh.
Is Demon School finally coming out?
It is. I thought you were going to make the mistake of accidentally talking about I Am Your Beast again.
No,
I was going to catch you, but you didn't catch
things,
it.
So you don't have to.
I'm proud of you. Yeah. Yeah. I played Demon School though, and I have played it multiple times this time around. I love them all. I feel
like Demon School has been at the last 5 PAXs I've been to.
It has. I liked this demo. This demo comprises the full week. there's a lot of time with it. The fact that you could spend time with this one was really appreciative. I had never played one that I didn't have 30 minutes to. So this one I was like, oh, thank God this can breathe. The base gameplay is like you are at a school and you're with a party and you're trying to kill demons. It's very Persona-esque, it's very Persona-esque in terms of style, content,
But isn't it more like a Persona 1 and 2 aesthetic, especially with like
100%
view?
Not just that, but because it's also not like the character relationships and how they are done is not like in Personas 3 onward, where you are talking to your party members, but you're not romancing them. You're not like trying to get those levels up. You can, and there is, but it's not the same. Does that make sense? Yeah. You're not trying to seduce. You're not playing the game, And it tells you outwardly on your dialogue choices which party member is going to like what. Strong will like that.
Okay,
that kind
I
of
see.
shit.
Okay, that's actually pretty handy for a game like this.
Yes, 100%. So like it's pretty straightforward and very literal in that sense. It's not very freeform. It is freeform in terms of areas you can go to, but at least for the demo, it listed the areas that had content. It listed the areas that had missions to them, side quests or otherwise. And then this gets to the gameplay, and I think the gameplay is the best part. It is a tactics game. It's a grid game, and you have different characters. It's much more complex than, say, Metal Slug Tactics in terms of team dynamics and what each party member can do. Each party member has different abilities, and those abilities are radically different. And in terms of movement is incredibly interesting in terms of how you can spend your action points and what necessarily you're able to do. For instance, there is a sidestep. The demo is very it wants you to encourage to use the sidestep because the sidestep is a free action. So you can move horizontally one space left or one space right without spending an action token. That's huge. That's such a big thing that you are able to use for synergy purposes and other purposes. And the game is really, really fun. I love the combat to this game. I've never talked about this game before, but this is one of my most anticipated of the year.
Does everything you've seen in the demo and like the demos you've played up this point, like how ideally long would you want this game to be? Because Persona games are long.
I think it's going to be less than it tells you. I'm going to look back on this when I edit and do the video. When you complete the demo, you do 1 full week in the demo, and it tells you how many weeks are in the game.
Oh, okay.
So I don't remember off the top, but it's not like a crazy. It's not like a full semester. It's like I want to say like 12 weeks.
It's a trimester,
roughly. Maybe I guess 12 weeks is a semester, but but the weeks go fast. Like this went by fast. So like I would say this is shorter than a Persona, and I think it's reasonable too. I think the character design's fun, and I think the plot is fun. The art style is great, and the side quests are cool. So I think this is one of those must plays for the year, at least in terms of playing the demo. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in it 100%.
Okay. Brogan, I'm going to sell you on the next game in...
Good luck.
10 words.
Okay.
The 10 words don't start now. I'm just saying this is Parcel Core.
This is Parcel Core. All right.
No, the 10 words hadn't started yet.
That's 4. The 10 words haven't started yet. That's 10. You didn't sell me.
What if Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio had a baby?
All right, that's good. I'm in it. All right, you sold me.
So this was shown off on the Wholesome Direct, I believe, this year. This is a game where you are a parcel delivery service. You're on an app. This is a strange new world of there's no more like delivery with cars. Everyone's doing it on bicycles now.
Global warming, methane gas. Sure.
and you pick one of 3 parcel delivery factions. I'm not really sure if those have any weight on what you're doing. I chose the Australian, the wallaby themed ones, and that was fun. But you're dropped into this city and you find clients, and they'll say like, I need you to deliver this thing of fish and chips to this guy on the other end of the city, but you got to get there in 3 minutes or else the fish and chips will get cold, you know? And then it's Crazy Taxi, and you're trying to get there in time, and it even has like the Crazy Taxi like green like grid borders rising up out of the ground, and it's like that's where you have to stop. But like a Jet Set Radio or a Tony Hawk Pro Skater, it's all about the movement. So you're looking for shortcuts that you can wall grind on, or just like rails you can grind on. You do tricks to boost your speed, but also your followers, because you are live streaming your deliveries. And so you have like an ongoing chat in the top right corner, which is like, man, this guy sucks at doing tricks.
That sounds, you know, like Mad Mullet Jack, which I will talk about one day, but not yet. Mm-hmm. Continue.
And it's just like what really blew me away about this, honest to God, was the soundtrack. Because like I say, it's a Crazy Taxi and a Jet Set Radio, and it has the soundtrack to back that up. This is a funky, fresh soundtrack that has like vocals and things on it. I have to look it up and see if it's like actual, like, I don't know, SoundCloud artists or things like that. But it really kept me going, especially as some of the challenges in the demo were really getting my goat with like, how do I get there? How do I get from here to there in only this amount of time? One of the things in the demo is like the King of Wine asks you to deliver this box of wine, and so since you're carrying bottles, it's fragile, so you can't be going off any jumps or getting hit by cars or what have you. So you have to figure out how to get it there as quickly and delicately as possible. And that was a little challenging for me, because I was still trying to figure out the movement. It has a lot of movement tech, but it's also like movement tech where in the tutorial, it's not really clear how you would apply that. You know, like a hard stop and 360 turn and things like that. This is another one where I'm looking forward to the full release, just because I do like Tony Hawk-esque games where it's just like, here's a little sandbox for you to ride around and do tricks in. And I also like Simpsons Hit and Run, and I like doing delivery and things like that.
This sounds like Neon White to me. The way you described, oh, you have to get it within a certain amount of time, and then you're like, when you first play it, you're like, oh, this seems impossible, and then you figure out the route, and it's like, oh, like the geography clicks in, and you're like, oh my god, I know what to do now, and then you clear a minute off the time.
I haven't played Neon White. I'm not sure about, like,
I mean, I'm not talking about like in terms of everything else, but like in terms of like getting there in time, having time be a primary thing where it's like, oh yes, there was a
circumstance where I stopped doing the mission to like, because it cut across this construction site, and I had to figure out how you get out of the construction site. And once I knew that, I could do the mission fine.
There you go. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think the only thing that's a bit fiddly is some of the menuing. There's like, at the end of the demo, it's like, oh, you've built up enough profit and followers to go into like heat mode or whatever it's called. And that's like, you just do delivery after delivery after delivery. But you have to like open your map like on your phone. It has like a phone menu for the interfacing. And you have to like tap which deliveries you want to do and get there in time to pick up the package and then do the delivery. So you're trying to like stack it up and get a multiplier going. That was a little tricky to figure out, because it's like you have to hold Y to bring up the phone to scan a QR code, and it's a little fiddly for something that's meant to be like go.
Okay, well, dang it. Well, would you recommend the game?
I would recommend the demo. The one thing with the full release I'd be looking for is if it has more environments outside of this first hub level, right? Because the first hub level is big and colorful, but it's also like, I could see the game just being set there, and that would kind of disappoint me a little. Okay, well, dang.
Murph, tell me about your love life.
I just want to be single. Okay, that's also the name of the game.
Tell me about this game.
This has been on my radar for a bit. This is a survival dating sim.
Okay, I'm sold already.
This is a dating sim where you are playing an asexual character that actually doesn't want to date anybody. You play a girl that it's their first day of an all-girls school, and all the other girl students are so into you, but you just want to make friends. And so it has all the trappings of a dating sim, like choosing dialogue options, dealing with these like crazy larger-than-life characters that are all archetypes. There's the tomboy, there's the popular girl, there's the nerd, there's the robot, all the classic archetypes of a dating sim. But instead of like choosing the option that's like, when the tomboy asks you like, what's your favorite after school activity? And you're like given the option of like doing sports, playing video games, baking pies, you're not actually supposed to be choosing their interests because that's going to raise their affection meter, and you don't want that. But you're also trying to make friends. So you're trying to like pick things that are like threading the needle between not being too interesting to them, but also being interesting enough that they want to hang out with you still. And also not being boring because you don't want to be a social outcast.
Okay, well, in comparison to every other, dating sim or even things that have parodied the genre, how does this rank up?
As a parody, it's very much in like, it's not a Doki Doki Literature Club. This is more wholesome and lighthearted about it because it's still using all the trappings of a dating sim. And I would say the character designs and the aesthetic is on point. It does things where like the character sprites are almost like paper cutouts. So when they turn, like the sprite like kind of twists. It's kind of like a Paper Mario thing to it.
Yeah.
And I would say like I was kind of invested in the quote unquote plot or setting to a degree. Like, I'm a sucker for archetypes. So when I get these big larger than life characters, I'm like, I want to know more about them. But then, I remember the premise of the game. And it's also just funny in parts. There's it like at the start, a character asks you, "What is your name?" And I just typed in like Murph or whatever, not realizing that my character had a thought bubble over their head showing me what their name was, and I just wasn't paying attention. And so the character said, "My name's Murph," and then in their thought they're like, "Why did I say that? That's not my real name." And then just characters call you that for the rest of the game.
That's so silly. But I respect that.
Yeah. I think it's cute, and I've just been waiting. This has been on my Steam wish list. I'm gonna say since 2020, and this is like the first time they've like had a demo or any sort of like playable state out. So I feel like it should be close to release. I would be very interested to see how it threads the needle of a dating sim with an asexual protagonist.
We'll see. I mean, I'm interested in this. I have now, since our Doki Doki Literature Club episode, I've been interested in comments on the genre, and I feel like this is a perfect entry to make a statement on the genre.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll be watching your asexuality with great interest.
Yeah. Murph, are you ready?
In the waning months of the Clone Wars, the 501st faced missions critical to the agenda of Chancellor Palpatine. When we arrived at the bombed-out ruins of Megiddo, our Jedi commander believed we had been sent to take out a droid energy collector. What Ki-Adi-Mundi didn't know, however, was that our unit of the 501st was really after an experimental Megiddan power source that the Chancellor wanted for his super laser. Keeping Mundi in the dark wasn't easy. The Jedi had become increasingly wary of the Chancellor's doings, and were on the lookout for the slightest hint of treachery. Just like the rest of them, though, he never caught whiff of what was really going on, until it was far too late. The success of the mission on Megiddo was something of a revelation for the men of the 501st. Suddenly, we realized that the Jedi could be fooled. And if they could be fooled, they could be killed.
You know, as I was having that wicked piss just now, I realized the one flaw with the ongoing meta plot is we don't introduce this show anymore. This is the Daydream Cast, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're an hour 40 into this.
Yep. Anyway, our game of the week is Star Wars Battlefront II, the good one from 2006.
The good one. Oh my god, continue.
Battlefront II, sequel to the original Star Wars Battlefront, seeks to expand everything that game did. It has a class-based system where you can fight between the two eras, the original trilogy of the Galactic Civil War, or the prequel trilogy of the Clone Wars, playing as the clones, the droids, the Rebellion, the Empire. Set on iconic Star Wars maps ranging from Dagobah to Jabba's Palace, Coruscant, and the Jedi Temple. The real expansion for the game was including more vehicles, space combat, and especially heroes. You can play as Darth Maul, Han Solo, Chewbacca, and even some oddball picks like Kai-Adi-Mundi and Aayla Secura. The game also features a bevy of different game modes such as Galactic Conquest, a full-on campaign detailing the history of the 501st Clone Legion, and even a mode where you can go to Endor and shoot Ewoks for fun. With that all said, Brogan, what is there even to say about this game? We've all played it.
Everyone in the entire world has played this game. I think my first thought replaying this game was, oh my god, I miss bots.
You miss bots, I miss bots. Every time a new multiplayer game comes out, I look up and be like, can I play with bots though? You know?
I think the appeal of both Battlefronts on a base instinctual level is like being in a battlefield and there being a lot of people in it. And it's not even necessarily like players, although if you played online back in the day, you could play like 30 people or whatever. But like in general with the bot vibe, it's like just the backdrop to the moment to moment. And I think that is so much fun. And what I found playing this time around was that there was a lot of tangible differences in the moment to moment based on the faction you were playing, based on the map you were playing, based on the mode you were playing. All those things had different vibes to them and gave a completely different flavor to them, even if there was a base instinctual, like, oh my god, I'm having fun in the moment.
I think my stance for this episode, as odd as it sounds, I want to take the stance of this game isn't that great, but it shouldn't be that great. This shouldn't be our gold standard for what a Star Wars game is. But somehow it is, because the game devs who are given this license just keep tripping on their own scrotums, you know?
Oh my gosh.
To me, this is like up there with like a Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi thing. I'm not here for the depth. I'm here for the toy box, and it's a very good toy box. But I think as a game, I think it does lack in parts. But it's also just a different kind of game than what we get right now.
I think a really good example that I felt playing it was, and I was also going to say this in a broad sense, I could tell the platform I was playing on. I don't know what platforms you played on. I played this on the PSP when I was a kid, which is a fantastic port. It's an amazing port on the PSP. It's crazy. And PS2. And then I played the original Battlefront 1 on Xbox, and I played Xbox Live. So that was my main exposure to multiplayer, was Battlefront 1. And then now I played it on PC. And playing on PC, it was so much easier to shoot things, but it came into focus that the blasters are still not 100% accurate.
No.
it feels literally like when you're playing it, you're like, oh, I understand why everyone was missing in the movies.
These uncivilized weapons from an older age.
yeah. It doesn't hit exactly the way you want unless you compensate for it. And once you compensate for it, it does hit the way you want. Which is fun.
I always played the engineer class, so I just had the shotgun.
Oh, there you go. Well, there you go.
I think so. Like, when I say like this game, like, isn't that good, I'm talking mainly on like that shooting level.
Yeah.
And when I say it's a different kind of game than we get now, it's also on that level because not a lot of massive multiplayer games are content with the player being fodder, right?
Yes.
They want you. The goal, if I boot up Battlefield 1 or what have you, or Call of Duty, what I am incentivized to do is stay alive as long as possible so I can get my kill streaks, I can get my prestige ranks, you know.
That KD ratio has got to be high.
Yeah. I am an individual, whereas with Battlefront, I don't mind dying because I'm playing literal stormtroopers. I am fodder. I am, you know, I am for the good of the Republic, you know.
And
so
even then, there's still points. And, like, let's say once you get 10 points or whatever amount you want to die, so that way when you go to the spawn, you can summon a Wookiee or another specialized class for your faction that is out and out better than what you've got. Or you could be a hero, or you could be a fucking Jedi or some shit. And that's a billion times better. And so you want to die at certain points so you can be like, yes, please, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And within the you know, I say all that, but even they still include kill streak stuff with like the special weapons you can get. Like if you get, I think it's something like 10 headshots with a sniper, you unlock just a way better sniper rifle that will kill anything regardless of where you hit them in one shot. Yeah. You know, and if you die, you lose that. Or you get buffs where it's like, oh, you regenerate health now based on like certain objectives that you've hit. And those do help those, like, one-life runs. But, like I said, I don't mind dying in this because it's like, well, now, you know, I was playing an engineer, maybe now I'll play a sniper. Or I'll play a droideka or something like that.
That's also usually the core battle. Usually the core battle in most modes you play is control point capture, and control points mostly determine spawns. And the actual number you have to worry about is your unit count. How many units... your reinforcements, how many units your faction has. Let's say you have 90 and the opponent has 100. That means you better fucking kill some motherfuckers or make sure you all stay alive long enough for that to balance out or put you in the lead. You start to worry about fodder numbers. Fodder numbers matter at that point.
Mm-hmm. In something like, you know, we say like, oh, you want to respawn so you can play as these different classes. I never really felt that great playing the higher level classes unless I was playing the clone faction, because the clone commander and the jet trooper just have these sense of like cool and like they actually feel powerful, whereas something like the droids in the Empire, you know, the Magna Guard and the Imperial officer, those are like classes that you play to like buff up your other forces. You are a commander, but your like ability to go solo and capture points on your own is very low. And that's how I play. I like to be like the solid snake sneaking in behind enemy lines and capturing a command point that's not being contested or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I was a super big fan of recon droids. I like different elements in the game, and I understand most of the time you're going to be playing this solo or single player, which kind of sucks in terms of those bots where support doesn't necessarily feel fleshed out. But when you play this online, or I used to play with a buddy of mine split screen or whatever, having a recon droid come in, shoot a couple guys, and then suicide bomb, and then you go in after, clean up, and then restock. Yeah. Though that was super satisfying to me. I loved that. I like the different abilities they offer and the different classes. And when you talk about the droids, you know, I think the droids are a bad faction, like period, in terms of like
They're very hard to headshot.
Actual meta. But that being said, they're so fun. I want to be a droideka. I want to roll around and have a shield. That sounds so much fucking fun. And also, I want to highlight the maps real quick. I think what's so cool as well is that each map has its own like vibe to it, even if it's in a control point style or whatever. They all have like a different structure to them, where there's like, oh, clear attacking, clear defending, clear, if there's vehicles. A good example is Hoth, where there's really only 3 main control points, and then there's like a couple side ones, and then you're trying to fight ATs, trying to go in and attack. And that's such a fun vibe. Or like you play Ewok, where you play a more closed in area. I think with the main hero map, where you can play as heroes just period, is the Tatooine map.
Mos Eisley.
Mos Eisley, yeah. And that's so fun.
Like, that was a huge selling point for the game. Like, I first saw this at a friend's house. I didn't even know a Battlefront 2 had come out. I played Battlefront 1 on the PS2 with my sister all the time. And he was like, let me show you something. And he, like, booted up the Mos Eisley, like, Heroes versus Villains mode. Yeah. And I was like, oh my god, you can be Darth Maul versus Ki-Adi-Mundi? That's incredible. Oh, that's so sick. And playing it now as an adult, it feels like a joke on the part of the devs that the hero versus villain mode is the one that, like, Yub Nub plays in the background as the music. In, like, the Jabba's Palace song.
It has a little bit of contempt to it, I think, yeah.
It's just from a, I promised myself I would limit the amount of this is a different time in Star Wars as a franchise. But that is something that really feels like this is a different time for Star Wars as a franchise.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I feel like, and you said that the new Battlefront 2, we're inevitably going to compare them, is a bad game. I think it shaped up to be a better game once they updated it and they fleshed it out. This is a game that came out good. This game fleshed out Battlefront 1. Honestly, the original Battlefront 1 was a little meager.
It was a little experimental in a way.
I think this expansion was what made it good.
I think the only thing that Battlefront 1 has as a leg up over 2 is that the different factions felt more individual. Like the Rebel Engineer had a different weapon compared to the Imperial Engineer. And therefore that had a different feeling to it. Where just like the faction feel is also something like doing an a real critical appraisal of this game is something that I noticed, and it's just hard to do a critical appraisal of this game, I feel, because it's so imbued with my childhood. It's like asking me like do a hard critical appraisal of your toy box or your Bionicles. And it's like, well, I don't know. I love them, That one's missing both its arms, but I came up with a story for why, know.
I mean, it's tough to do in that sense. And I also like the moment you get bored of one game mode, there's always something else. Like the space battles, I feel like aren't particularly great, but whenever I was bored with what was there, I went to the space battles, and dogfighting was fun and engaging. And not just the hero stuff, but like, let's take Galactic Conquest. I personally love Galactic Conquest. It's basically like a board game, and you're trying to fight for territory with an opponent, and you're collecting different planets and different resources, and you're upgrading your faction along the way. To me, that was much more engaging than the actual 501st story.
Yeah, because it's more dynamic. It's unfolding, and you're making choices about what planets to invade, and you're kind of like being, well, that planet's going to be really hard to take. So, because the spawns and things like that. And so you're going to be like, I'm going to wait until I have some buffs. I'm going to wait till I can spawn a hero to join me in combat or something like that.
Yep. There's only a couple upgrades worth having, especially when you get to the actual power-ups. Like, in my opinion, extra reinforcements, regenerating health, and heroes were the primary ones I invested in every time.
Yeah, let's talk about the heroes, because that was a huge selling point for this. Battlefront 1 had heroes, but you couldn't play as them. They were just like something you could like in its Galactic Conquest equivalent. It could be like, in this fight, the enemy is just going to have Darth Vader. He's going to be running around killing stuff. You can't kill him. You cannot kill Darth Vader. Me and my sister have horror stories about Darth Vader chasing us down through Renvar Harbor. In this, it's like, oh, you've built up enough points. Do you want to play as Yoda right now?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. And then it just turns into a Muso game, right? It turns into Dynasty Warriors. We're just mowing down dudes.
Yep. And that's so fun.
I personally always got a little disappointed when the hero wasn't a Jedi or a Sith. It's like,
yeah, you get like Han Solo.
It's like,
yeah, it's like,
It's like, he has like a nifty sniper gun, but I could just play as a sniper and not be on a time limit, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
And let's talk about the campaign, because that was also something where I was just like, man, just like a different time in the franchise. It's mainly from a lore perspective. The campaign is you are playing as a clone in the 501st, going through the end of the Clone Wars into basically to the Battle of Hoth, and the rise of the Empire. And it's just like evidently this was rushed. Like, they only like had like a couple months before release, and they're like, we should put in a campaign mode. And it says something for how effective it still is. It only has one voice actor doing the narration between missions, but he has such gravitas to it, like talking about after the Battle of Felucia, Aayla Secura came to personally thank us and see us off. It was a good thing we were all wearing our helmets. None of us could look at her in the eye, and that just like the Clone Wars cartoon TV show is good for, I'm gonna say, a grand total of 30 episodes, but it really changed the perspective on the clones in the whole franchise.
Let me ask you, I guess this is the time. The last Star Wars episode we did was Terrace Cassie.
Yes. That
was all classic trilogy. What are your opinions on the prequel trilogy?
Oh no. Here's my...
You thought there was nothing to talk about. Oh, there's stuff to talk about.
Here's my grand Star Wars take. It does not matter what the response to a Star Wars piece of media at launch is, because time has shown us that it will always be grandfathered in some way or another, right?
I agree with that.
I am not so much like... It's not prequel revisionism that gets me, it's reception to the prequels that get revisionism that gets me. If you want to think, like, I like Attack of the Clones, but I also grew up with that movie. It was the only one I had on DVD. I saw Revenge of the Sith in theaters, and I was like 7, so what you grow up with is really going to affect your opinion on it, and I guarantee goddamn to you, in 10 years, we're gonna have kids that grew up with the sequel trilogy and be like, I really like Poe Dameron, and things like that. I like Poe Dameron. It will always
I like Poe Dameron, y'all. I'm saying it here and now.
You're Bro Dameron.
I'm Bro Dameron. Here's the thing. Here's my take. I'm not going to speak on the sequel trilogy. That will be another time, another place. I think the prequels are bad, but, huge but.
Huge job of the butt.
Huge job of the butt. I think all Star Wars movies are bad. And there are some that transcend There are only a couple, and Revenge of the Sith is one of them. Revenge of the Sith hits space opera. And when it does that, it goes to a level of bliss that I greatly enjoy. That being said, I think the real power and oomph to the Clone Wars trilogy is the world building. And this was the time, I'm not a huge fan of the EU. I think the Clone Wars was the best time for other Star Wars media. Like, this era of Star Wars media was so fucking good. Like, if you were a fan of, like, games and, like, books and shit, this was the fucking era to be in. Mm-hmm. And, like, this is where the Renaissance came. Like, not just Battlefront 2, but we're talking, you know, Knights of the Old Republic, Republic Commando. All that shit was this era, and it was so much fun.
I have this thing I bring up with my friends, that one of my favorite things that 2000s, and some, like, it bleeds into the 2010s, Star Wars media did, was, like, surprise Darth Maul, where it's like Star Wars Force Unleashed. There's a surprise Darth Maul fight. You'd never guess where it is, but it's there. And it's like you're watching the Clone Wars. Surprise Darth Maul, he's back. You know, they kept, like, inserting him into things because he's so cool, right?
Shit, they even did that in fucking Rogue One, even after all is said and done.
Yeah.
They just love throwing him in shit.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to, you know, the prequel movies being good or bad, they are memorable. They are iconic, right? And I think that bleeds into this game where, you know, we touched on it with the maps, but the maps are just, like, littered with little Easter eggs in places. Like, you go to Jabba's palace, and you can drop down into the Rancor pit, and the Rancor's there, and he'll eat you. You can't kill the Rancor. He's there for fun. On the Death Star map, you can shoot the vent and go down into the trash compactor and get compacted. There's no reason to go down there, but they put it in there because it's fun, you know? And I think that's something, that is the true, honest-to-God selling point of this game. It's not the depth of the combat or anything like that. It is truly that it is just fun, and it feels like it was made by people who wanted you to have fun. And I think, you know, again, it's just, like, not a type of multiplayer game we get from big studios or big brands anymore, where it's just, I'm turning into an old man in real time, but it just starts, you know? You put it in, and it starts. And you can just drop in, you don't need to unlock modes, you don't need to think about battle passes. You can go, it's straight up called instant action. And you're like, I want to go to the Forest Moon of Endor today. And you go in, and you go to the Forest Moon of Endor, and it's like that, right?
I love the map specific. I love the Ewoks. The Ewoks are fun.
And there's, like, you know, there's, like, a game mode where you play Wumpas on Hoth, you know? And that's goofy, and that's fun, and that keeps the livability of the game high. When I think about, like, how this game lingers in the minds of people that played it, it's because of that, because it's always giving you, you know, it's not necessarily pulling new tricks out of its hat as you play it, but it has a lot of tricks at the start for you to rotate between.
Yep. The moment you get bored of one thing, you go to another, and you're like, oh yeah, I love this game still.
Yeah. It's so easy to just, like, I would constantly be like, I have to like, kill 2 hours. I'm going to go into Star Wars Battlefront and just load up a playlist of different maps I like. And I'll have fun with it, you know?
Yep. And it's so shocking how much you remember. I haven't played this game in probably 10 years, and even then, I was like, oh my god, like...
This game lives on through, like, memes, right? Like, the ambient dialogue is just, like, famous now, on a level very few Star Wars products really are. Like, you know, when you see a super battle droid, what do you gotta do? You gotta watch those wrist rockets, you know? When you have droids, you have to shout out, we got droids! And it's just like the simulations.
Yeah.
You know, things like that, like, it just... And I don't know, I couldn't explain why those lines linger on. Because it's one of those kind of, like, things where just ad nauseum you hear it, but something in the delivery, in the context of being in this huge firefight, and someone shouts out, like, watch out for the Wookiee, you know? That just feels... like, dynamic, and it does have that again, it's that toy box feel.
Like, how do you feel about the vehicles?
The vehicles are also part of that. Like, you know, because something the prequel area did well is it had a lot of funky looking vehicles. Those Geonosis, those big wheel things that just shoot rockets. You can drive one of those. You want to pilot an AT-ST? You want to pilot a Hoth snowspeeder and try to tangle up the AT-ST legs? I tried that 100 times. It never worked for me.
I feel like they're a little clunky, especially when you get into space combat. Like, when I did space combat, I was, like, just going into the enemy ship and wrecking shit. I felt like that was always more effective. So that made me, like, play the normal game.
I always play Marine when doing the space battles.
Yeah.
I think, and again, the thing with, like, the vehicles is because I never played this game online, the vehicles to me are a means to get to a command point, and then I have to get out of the vehicle and capture the command point, right? I would never really do anything like, oh, I'm just going to be in the vehicle and cruise around killing dudes. I was always very objective-minded when playing this game.
You can kill a lot of dudes if you're in a tanky thing, but if you were in a speeder, you needed to get out by the time you got to a control point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was always playing it as an adult now. What I think more about is like the turrets. I'm very turret-minded. I got to set up turrets. I got to take out turrets. One of my favorite maps is Camino, because there's this specific section, if you're playing as the clones versus the droids, there's this specific, like, upwards bridge you have to climb where there's, like, just a turret barrowing, like, it's just a killing field. And I always liked upgrading to get the jet trooper and then, like, flying up there and, like, destroying it so all my buddies could climb up the bridge finally. Like, this game has a good sense of, like, establishing choke points and beachheads.
Yes. 100%. I like the Dark Trooper for the Empire. I like the Bothan Spy. I'm trying to think.
I never play as the Bothan. I don't like the Incinerator, and I felt the invisibility was useless. But that may just be another multiplayer, like playing with another human thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's just a lot of different. Like it that also showcases how the way you play is very different depending on circumstance. Also, a lot of things changed based on like the platform I played. Again, I played on multiple platforms, so like there was a lot that was limited. The most hero shooter time I played was on the PSP, for instance. PSP was also very like stiff in terms of aiming, but like in terms of content, there was a lot there, and it was all solid. That was like crazy to me.
Yeah. Did you because of you played on the PSP and the PS2, did you ever play this with mods?
No.
Okay, this time when I played through it, and I remember the last time I installed it, like, I don't know, years ago, I was in college, but I installed a ton of mods, and there are some great, like, mods for this that will do things like add a bunch of new character classes specific to the factions. Like, it changes up the Magna Guards for the droids to actually have their, like, little purple battle staves they have in the movies. So you have, like, a dedicated melee unit class. And then ones that add in new eras. Like, there's an Old Republic mod. There's one for the sequel trilogy where you can play as, like, Kylo Ren and stuff. And, you know, they kind of, like, border on... How do I want to phrase this? The levels they add are kind of, like... CSGO map level, you know, like when like people will just add like fan-made CSGO maps that are like...
I understand what you're saying. Yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad that translates, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, play on Alderaan. Play here we're going to add in all the maps from Battlefront 1 that didn't get carried over. And that really gives this game a long tail. And that adds in a lot of that depth and complexity that I was talking about is missing in the base game.
I agree. And I think that's one of the bigger things is like I did notice the ones that were missing. That's the one thing that I kind of want to play the new Battlefront re-release for, even though apparently it's a bad port. I like the idea of being able to play Battlefront 1 maps again. Yeah.
It is just weird. Like, there's no Bespin map in in Battlefront 2 base.
Yep.
And things like that. And also, where's Lando? We were talking about this in Masters Terras Kasi. Why is Lando always left out? Like, I hope it's not the reason I think it is, but they put in Kai Adi Mundi even though woke Disney changed his birthday.
How hard is it to have his character model and have a shoot? Like, he has a blaster.
Yeah.
This dude does not have a crazy moveset.
No.
You know?
No.
I don't know. Murph, they fucked up. They fucked up big time.
Did they?
I think they did. I think Lando's super fun in the... So, I guess it's time. How much did you hate the new Battlefront games?
I didn't have a lot of time with them. So, like, hate is a strong word. I think it's the circumstance of, like, you know, hearing for years after, like, Battlefront 2 came out, like, oh, Battlefront 3 is in production, it's gonna come out, and then nothing happening until I was a freshman in college, where it's like, a new Battlefront is coming out, and they had this, like, really hype teaser trailer for it, with, like, the walker, the AT-AT, like, foot appearing on Hoth, right? And then, like, the pre-news comes out, and it's like, there will be 3 maps. And it's like,
that's rough.
What?
Yeah.
As a sequel to Battlefront 2, this game that we have been talking about, its main selling point is the breadth of content it has. You're going to have 3 maps and a progression system.
And mostly that progression system's pay to win. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Battlefront 2, the EA one comes out. And it's like, we're doing a loot box system. The heroes and vehicles are power-ups. When you're in a Republic dropship, it's just the Call of Duty, like, airstrike. You don't actually get in it and fly around. Like, I think a lot of these are ruined by the e-sportsification of multiplayer shooters. Like,
I agree.
Battlefront 2 kind of falls into this, like, I don't know, Quake Champions... or not Quake Champions, but, just like Quake 3 and 2 and whatever, where it's like in Halo 1, where we just don't get these kind of sandbox type multiplayer games anymore. It has to be this progression system,
I think Quake Champions is a good example of taking that foundation and then having those modern elements to it, but then the modern elements sort of ruin the experience. Like, I don't need season passes and class, and hero abilities with cooldowns to my fucking characters.
I just want toys.
I just want toys. What are we doing here? And the problem is, when you ask, what are we doing here? The answer is, they want to charge you money. And then you're like, oh, I have to spend more money to get something that I might want.
Yes.
And then you lose me. And then it's like, fuck, I hate this.
Uh-huh.
It's tough.
Yeah. It's just... and it's like I said at the start, where my stance is kind of like... It's kind of like what I was talking about with Animal Well. Where it's like, I don't want to put Battlefront 2 2005 on a pedestal, because we can do better. Can't we?
It's rough because it's like, it is great and it is doing way better than its peers. And then, especially for Battlefront 2, I don't think lessons were learned after. And then it's like, well, shit. I wish we could do better. This should be the bar.
In a perfect world, Battlefront 2 would be a 7 out of 10.
Yes.
That is my stance. I agree. That is my thesis statement.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you mean. 100%. It's rough out here. This is not the ideal timeline. We fucked up along the way.
Yeah. That's Battlefront 2 is a 7 out of 10, and I am old now. That is this episode.
Oh my god. All right, Murph, I feel like we're winding down. Tell us about the plugs. What are we doing next week? What's happening?
Brogan, I have a confession to make.
Huh.
You know how the clones say this is just like the simulations?
Oh no, what's happening?
You are still in the simulations.
Oh no!
This entire time, this entire season of the Daydream Cast, you have been training unintentionally, I have been Mr. Miyagiing you. All of these games have been preparing you for your EVO 2024 debut.
Oh no!
Fist of the North Star taught you the way of the wandering warrior. Dark Souls 2 taught you to survive in a world of old legends and lost heroes. Devil May Cry 3 taught you to combo. Paper Mario taught you timed button parrying. Harvester taught you to kill. Tetris Effect and Pac-Man trained your split-second decision-making. Boktai, The Sun is in Your Hand, taught you that there is always a light in the darkness. Okay. Fallout got you familiar with the deserts of the American West and the freaks that dwell within.
Going to Reno. I get you. Yeah.
And Battlefront 2, I mean, that game's just hype.
That was a good one.
You have one final trial waiting before you, and that is to do an episode.
Is it Third Strike? I want it to be Third Strike.
We're doing it on the greatest fighting game of all time, and it is not Third Strike. You Capcom shill. We're playing Garo, Mark of the Wolves.
Oh, no! Oh, that's going to be fun anyways. Let's do it, Murph. Let's get it!
Let's get it.
All right. Oh, I think we're playing out now. You can find us on YouTube, twingeeks.com. Murph has a thing called This Podcast is a Bad Idea with co-host Fru. And thank you all